So, good morning. I am Janine,
I'm Zach.
and we're kind of starting something new for our family. We've got a lifestyle vlog, but one of the main reasons that we wanted to kind of tell our story and um, is to be a resource maybe for others as it relates to um, kind of our reverse role that we chose for our family once we had baby number two. So, um, just kind of give you a little bit of background, and we'll start in on some of the resources um, that we kind of pulled in, and more importantly, kind of the dialogue that him and I had, and finally the conclusion that we came to. So, um, so baby number two, this was back in 13. And so at the time, I covered an entire state for work. I'm in medical sales.
And I was doing physical therapy aid work at a clinic not too far away, but it was still a little bit of a commute. And I had a normal 8-hour shift, but it was an early shift, so I opened the place. So that meant I had got there early, and got off early, which was good. But with our oldest, and only at the time, we started thinking about using a nanny, so I wouldn't have to get get Layton up super early because I had to be there early. It really wasn't kind of fair to her, so we were um, talked about getting a nanny and decided to go down that path, and found an excellent person to fill that role. It was how long did you do that?
For about 6 months.
6 months.
We wanted to kind of give it a try and just kind of get adjusted prior to Miss Emery Reese arriving. And then 4 to 5 weeks before I was due with Emery, our nanny had a medical emergency, and so she was going to have some weightlifting restrictions, and so we were kind of back to the drawing board.
Yeah, because with the newborn and car seats and all the gear, and we just knew that wasn't fair to the nanny to try and fulfill her normal duties in the child, caring for the newborn, as well as the she was four at the time.
Yeah, Layton was 4
because they're 4 years apart. It was just sort of been too much for her to ask her to do, and so then we started considering other options. What do I just try to get the grandparents involved, but they were working, so that was going to be logistically difficult. And so
some of the grandparents.
Right.
My mom
right.
had retired, but she felt really strongly about wanting to be a grandparent as opposed to a caregiver. And so, although she wanted to spend time with them and didn't as often, she didn't want that pressure of having to do those things. It just changes the game.
My parents lived fairly close by, but they were both working at the time too, so that wasn't an option. So then we started to talk about me staying home with the kids and being a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah, so one of the things that we really started looking at was just crunching the numbers, and then the opportunity. I read quite a few books, but there really wasn't a lot of resources out there. And I attempted to get Zach to read some of the books, but he's not a reader.
I can read, but books just tend to not keep my attention for as long as they probably do for most people. So,
so
it's
anyway,
not my cup of tea. So I love listening to people talk about things if they read it in a book. But anyways, side point. But carry on.
So long story short, we started crunching the numbers and looking at other resources, and you always want to. You never know until you just dive in and kind of jump into it. But I had this outline looking at, how much did I make? How much did he make? What was our tax bracket? What was his tax bracket or his income? Adding to our tax bracket, did that kind of kick us up to the next the next step or stage there. Clothing, which you probably have more clothing now than you did at Westgate.
Yeah, they had a uniform.
Right.
Or not a uniform, but kind of
Yeah.
cool stuff. But, you know, we're in the same things for most of the week. So, yeah, I guess that was kind of good. But, and logistically, we're like, do we
It was about an
try
18.
to keep my job? But, we liked the daycare that Layton was in at the time. But it was right over by my office, which was convenient for the very, the first few years she was born. But like I said, now we had these other uh, things to consider. Most importantly, the new baby coming along, and we would have been ahead of, if you want to look at the monetary. I was with the daycare costs, and would have made a little bit more, but was it worth it with the carting, back and forth and trying to get people to help if that needed. And then there's those sick days and so and so can't, go to daycare. Then what do? I have to call in the last minute to my office, and that's not fair to my boss and the other employees that have to pick up the slack. So we decided to for me to stop working. We
outside of the home.
Outside of the home, yeah, and
well, and just to kind of qualify it a little bit. So Layton, our first, she had 7 ear. No, she had probably eight or 9 ear infections within the first 12 months. So there were many times where we had to be, like I was up in Seattle putting on a training or helping with the training, and he would be in the middle of helping patients, and we didn't even have any resources to figure out other than just leaving work. And we wanted to be there for her, of course, and get her to the doctor and all of that. So I'm sure you all are familiar with that. But then you factor in a second child, and it's like, oh my word, like if we have a repeat of that again, how are we going to manage that? And with him leaving the house at 6 a.m., getting the girls, to daycare, and then me potentially having these overnights multiple times throughout the week. And here's our third child.
Guest appearance by the furry 4-legged monster. Okay, thank you.
So anyway, long story short, when we factored in some of our experience from our first, we couldn't help but say, okay, if that happened again, we wanted to make sure and have the best life, not just zooming around and kind of surviving. We wanted to be thriving and enjoying every moment with our kids that we possibly could. So after, deliberating and
a lot of consideration and what ifs and, what does that mean? What are people going to think?
Which
I jumped into being a stay-at-home dad. Jumped into that pool.
Neither one of us really cared what anybody else had to say, but
I wasn't worried about that.
And I'm thankful that I do have a husband that doesn't have kind of the pride challenges I think that can come along with the male species.
And most of the, I can't really think of any outspoken people or that said you're crazy. It's been support.
Right.
Cool. Now you can. Some people don't really understand how much work goes into it. Oh, right. You just get to hang out at home all day. Well, yeah, but all of you who have kids, there's not much sitting down and doing nothing.